Deploy to learn. Reframe release as the beginning of insight, not the end of creation. Ask, is this good enough to help someone today? Welcome to the Innovation Forge. In today's episode, we visit the Forge Bellows. Let's see how innovation meets artistry as we forge something extraordinary together.
You are listening to the Innovation Forge, the #1 podcast on adaptive enrollment management, exploring the data, marketing, and strategy that fuels higher education. Here's your host, David Dysart.
Welcome to the Fieldsmith Register, to the Finish Line Fog, a guided log of the quiet hazards that stall our work near the finish. These fogs, fractures, and loops that keep good projects from becoming real ones. I'm your narrator, David Dysart, but I'm bringing you this field guide of the Threadweaver, keeper of the yielding loom. In each entry, we name the stall, trace its sign, and offer a way forward. Not all work needs more effort. Sometimes it needs a name. Let's see how the Finish Line Fog takes shape today. Introduction on the Finish Line Fog. As recorded by the Threadweaver, keeper of the yielding loom, filed under the first entry in the Fieldsmith's register. They rarely quit. That's the first thing to understand about those who falter near the finish. They don't slam the forge door, tear up the blueprints, or shout that it wasn't worth it. No, the ones who stall near the end, your teammates, your colleagues, yourself, simply slow, pause, hesitate, and in that space, the fog creeps in. The Finish Line Fog is not failure. It's the quiet, heavy pause that settles in after momentum should carry you. It clouds judgment, distorts progress, and makes small steps feel like mountains. The work is often 85%, 90%, sometimes 99% complete. Sometimes the project is even live. But the final move, that click, the send, the push, the ask, it doesn't happen. Not because of a flaw in the work, but because of a fog in the mind. Some can call it burnout, others mistake it for caution. But those who've studied the forge fires know better. This handbook, the Fieldsmith Register, contains observed hazards from years of work with builders, senders, dreamers, and finishers. These aren't productivity tips. They're field notes from the emotional and behavioral wilds we must cross between creation and completion. Each entry in the register is a distinct facet of the Finish Line Fog, given form, story, and strategy. You'll find momentum fractures, where rhythm dissolves, cognitive traps, where fear or identity twist the path, fear behaviors, where recursive patterns in inaction stall progress, and launch disconnects, where done doesn't mean used. This is not a manual for shipping faster. It is a lens to help you see when the work is adrift and to give it a name. Because once something has a name, it can be spoken aloud. And once it's spoken, it can be moved. So read not just to understand the fog. Read to find the handle again. It may be cold now, but I guarantee it still fits your hand. Let the work continue. Threadweaver, keeper of the yielding loom, witness to the fog and the flame. Entry number 8, the Fieldsmith's Register, filed by Threadweaver, keeper of the yielding loom, inscribed carefully in the margins of a 4th-year redesign proposal, never submitted. The attachment spiral, field mark. If I launch it, it's no longer mine. In counterexample, over the course of a year, Micah built a multi-stage predictive dashboard. It was beautiful, with elegant queries, rich visuals, and a thoughtful design. She showed it at team meetings, made small tweaks weekly, and kept promising that it would be ready soon. When asked why it hadn't launched, she paused. I'm just not done with it yet. Hazard classification. Fear behaviors. Definition. The attachment spiral forms when a staff member becomes so connected to a project that launching it feels like a loss of ownership. The longer they've spent on it, the harder it becomes to let go. The project becomes part of their role, their rhythm, so completion starts to feel like disappearance. Psychological roots. Identity fusion. Project becomes a reflection of self-worth. Loss aversion. Releasing the project feels like giving something up. Fear of obsolescence. If I finish this, what will I do next? Protective perfectionism. Postponing vulnerability under the mask of refinement. Common signs in the wild. Project owner keeps living in the project long after readiness. Revisions and minor tweaks continue indefinitely. Launch timelines are vague or always pushed out. Feedback received emotionally, even when minor. The project appears polished and praised, but never deployed. Reforging strategy. Name the spiral. Acknowledge the emotional attachment as natural and temporary. Create a closing ritual. Mark the project's release with affirmation and recognition. Separate the worker from the work. Reinforce that their value isn't tied to this one thing. Assign a steward. Transition ownership after launch to help the creator detach. Use cases for staff. Long-running tools, reports, and dashboards with solo ownership. Projects presented repeatedly, but never deployed. High investment builds with no release deadline. Creators who visibly struggle to let others edit or use the work. For coaches and managers, watch for preciousness around projects, along with resistance to share or change. Help staff define what success looks like after release. Offer a next opportunity to challenge or maybe just soften the transition. Lore fragment. She wove the tapestry until her fingers knew no other motion. To hang it on the wall felt like erasure, so it stayed folded, perfect, and unseen. Writings from the Loom Keeper's Solace. Final entry. Entry number 9. The Fieldsmith's Register. Filed by Threadweaver, Keeper of the Yielding Loom. Carved lightly into the underside of a test environment, never published. The Glass Stage. Field mark. It looks ready, but no one dares to touch it. In counterexample. Lewis finished the new council report 2 weeks ago. It had been tested, checked, and bookmarked, but he still hasn't shared it. What if the data's wrong? He asked. What if it slows people down? What if it's not useful at all? No one has seen the report, not because it failed, but because he fears it might. Hazard classification. Fear behaviors. Definition. The class stage appears when a project is so close to launch that the next move would be expose it to risk. It looks polished, complete, and solid, but in the mind of its creator, it feels breakable. The project becomes untouchable, not because it isn't strong, but because what if it shatters? Psychological roots. Catastrophic thinking. Fear that any error will invalidate the entire project. Imposter syndrome. Worry that the launch will reveal the creator's shortcomings. Perceived fragility. Believing the work can't withstand public use or criticism. Finality. Anxiety. Feeling that launching removes the safety of possibility. Common signs in the wild. Work that appears done, but is never shared. Long periods of inactivity despite visible readiness. Last-minute rechecking, stalling, or one more pass behaviors. Staff voice fears about quality, usefulness, or exposure. Launch steps avoided without formal blockers. Reforging strategy. Break the glass gently. Remind staff that launches invite learning, not judgment. Create soft landings. Used phased rollouts, pilot groups, or quiet releases. Name the fear without shame. Normalize that everyone faces this moment, and it doesn't mean the work is weak. Focus on impact over impression. Shift attention to the audience's belief and benefit, but not the creator's. Focus on impact over impression. Shift attention to the audience's benefit, not the creator's performance. Use cases for staff. Reports, dashboards, and workflows left unpublished out of fear of being wrong. Email campaigns built and tested but never scheduled. Creators who second-guess final steps based on imagined outcomes. For coaches and managers, Recognize when hesitance stems from fear, not logic. Offer support to test in safe environments. Provide stories and data about imperfect but impactful launches. Lore fragment. He stepped lightly on the stage, but the floor glittered like glass. But it was only the light. It had always been stone. Tale of the Mirror Builders, Volume 3, as told in the Shadows of Proof. Entry number 10, the Fieldsmith's Register. Filed by Threadweaver, keeper of the yielding loom, whispered beneath a breath at the back of a final review meeting. Stage burn. Field mark. It's been seen, but not tested, and now it feels too visible to fail. Encounter example. Tessa introduced her new comm flow at a leadership retreat in spring. The concept was praised, the logic admired. Since then, she's edited it 12 times, but never launched it. It's not that it isn't ready, she finally admitted. It's that now everyone knows about it. What if it doesn't live up to what I said it would? Hazard classification. Fear behavior. Definition. Stage burn occurs when a project has been built, possibly shared, praised, or even positioned with such visibility that the creator begins to fear that the reality won't match the perception. Launch feels dangerous. The fear isn't of failure, it's of disappointment, comparison, or misalignment with others' expectations. Psychological roots. Evaluation anxiety. Fear of being critiqued by peers or leadership. Identity threat. The project has become a reflection of self-worth. Anticipated disappointment. Expecting others to say, that's all it was? Social comparison bias. Belief that others would have done it better. Common signs in the wild. Project shown publicly, but delayed despite readiness. Creator adds small tweaks repeatedly, but can't explain why. Feedback loops closed, but not acted on. Staff says, it's almost there, just making sure it's strong enough. Emotional discomfort around letting it go live because of perceived scrutiny. Reforged strategy. Normalized imperfect firsts. Reframe launch as a beginning, not a final judgment. Add privacy back in. Create soft rollouts or controlled releases to build confidence. Anchor to purpose, not praise. Shift focus from approval to impact. Reclaim the work. Remind the creator that no one else could have done it the same, and that's why it matters. Use cases for staff. Leadership-facing tools or dashboards delayed after initial presentation. Campaigns previewed in meetings but stalled due to internal pressure. Creators who stall because they're tied the reputation to the outcome. For coaches and managers, look for signs of over-identification with the project. Coach towards audience utility, not audience judgment. Offer quiet lunges to help rebuild confidence in forward motion. Lore fragment. He raised the blade in front of the court before it was sharpened, and though no one mocked him, the echo of imagined laughter held his hand for years. Fragment from the veiled flame ledger, burned at the edge to protect the name. Entry number 11, the Fieldsmith's Register, filed by Threadweaver, keeper of the yielding loom. Etched on the reverse side of a dashboard's changelog, unopened by its intended audience. The Unstruck Anvil. The Unstruck Anvil. Field mark. The work was built, but no one picked up the hammer. Encounter example. Aiden built a counselor dashboard that stitched together visit data, application status, and aid flags, all in one place. He shared the link after lunch, once, with no training, no pitch, no invitation. Leadership never logged in. I guess they didn't need it after all, he said. But they never saw what it could do. Hazard classification. Launch disconnects. Definition. The unstruck anvil occurs when a project is finished, but it's launched into silence. The creator assumed that building it was enough. But without storytelling and context in the internal advocacy, the work goes unused. Not because it failed, but because no one ever knew how to begin using it. Psychological roots. Finish line fallacy. Mistaking launch for completion. Quiet launch syndrome. Sending it without supporting it. Underpitched innovation. Assuming the tool's value is self-evident. Adoption anxiety, avoiding the discomfort of asking others to change. Common signs in the wild. Projects go live, but receive no mention in meetings. Staff say it's available if they want it, without direct engagement. No rollout plan, training, or internal promotion accompanies the tool. Builder disengages shortly after launch, expecting the work to speak for itself. Obviously. Leadership never sees the project's strategic role or benefit. Reforging strategy. Pitch with purpose. Treat internal rollouts like external marketing. Tell the use case story. Don't just share the tool, share the problem it solves. Assign an advocate. If the builder won't promote it, designate someone who will. Extend the finish line. Define success not as launch, but as adoption. Use cases. For staff. Dashboards or tools launched without promotion or onboarding. Campaigns that assume audience curiosity without invitations. Slate portals, queries, and comms sets that go live but remain untouched. For coaches and managers. Support staff in articulating why this matters to decision makers. Help teams plan launches that include narrative, visibility, and reinforcement. Teach that building alone isn't enough. Use must be activated. Lore fragment. He built the anvil and placed it well, but he struck no metal, called no smith, spoke no forge fire word, and so the anvil rang only in his memory. Entry from the bellows without echo, marked unread. Entry number 12, the Fieldsmith's Register. Filed by Threadweaver, keeper of the yielding loom. Preserved at the edge of a launch calendar, marked complete in faded ink. The burnless flame. Field mark. It launched. And then? Nothing. Encounter example. The new travel registration form launched on schedule. Emails went out. The link was live. But no one followed up. No reminders were sent. No one checked submissions. After 3 weeks, it had only 2 responses. And both were test records. Hazard classification. Launch disconnect. Definition. The burnless flame occurs when a project is successfully launched, but no action follows. The fire lit, but it didn't spread. No reinforcement, monitoring, or response. The tool or message lands with silence. It may be functional, even well built, but without interaction, it makes no impact. Psychological roots. Completion coma. Relief at launch creates a pause that becomes abandonment. Assumption of self-sufficiency. Belief that, if it's live, they'll use it. Attention shift. Launching a project causes immediate redirection to the next one. No accountability structure. No one assigned to monitor or respond. Common signs in the wild. Portals, forms, and emails are live but unmonitored. No reminders or reinforcements after initial launch. Tools created for staff or students that receive no engagement support. No metrics, no updates, no follow-up plans. Project team says, we launched it, but cannot describe what happened next. Reforging strategy. Assign a striker. Launch owner must also monitor and engage afterwards. Build the echo in. Plan follow-up actions at the same time as launch. Use checkpoint reviews. Schedule impact checks 1 to 2 weeks post-launch. Treat launch as a midpoint. Make it clear that the real work starts after it's live. Use cases. For staff. New communications with no follow-up or engagement tracking. Portals, forms, and workflows launched but ignored post-launch. Strategy rollouts with no accountability for reinforcement. For coaches and managers, we require post-launch plans as part of project wrap-ups. Coach staff to define what success looks like and how they'll know it happened. Normalize that shipping is not the end. It's the start of real value. Lore fragment. The fire rose, steady and still, but it gave no warmth, no crackle, no light to gather near, only heat without heart. Pages from the ember void, transcribed in the season of hollow fires. Conclusion on the work that waits, as recorded by Threadweaver, keeper of the yielding loom, filed in the final margin of the register, stitched in the ash-dyed thread. Not all fog lifts when named. Sometimes, even with every hazard marked and every field sign noted, the work still hesitates, still cools, still fades beneath competing fires. That, too, is part of the pattern. This register was not written to shame that stall or mock the pause. It was written because we forget. Even the best of us forget that the final steps require more than time and tools. They require courage, not in the bold, dramatic way, but in the soft, persistent kind that presses forward when no one is asking any more. The hazards you've read are not flaws in character. They are echoes of effort, proof that something mattered enough to nearly finish. But nearly is not where the Forge lives. The Forge lives in done, in live, in sent, in shared, in used. And so, if you find yourself near the end of something, and the silence starts to stretch, if your flame flickers low and your grip loosens on the handle, return here. Trace the signs, match the pattern, name the fog, then pick up the hammer again. You do not need to feel ready. You only need to remember that done is a kind of flame, and it still waits to burn. Threadweaver, witness of restarts, field scribe of the final step. Thank you, audience, for joining me on this journey. I probably say this to no real surprise, that I have felt each of these finish line fogs. And I wanted a way to not only express the emotions and the struggles that I've gone through when facing these challenges, but a way to tell people they're not alone. I think I've seen a lot recently as I've tried to write the book, release the book, publish the book, do the podcast, create the content, that being a perfectionist or being afraid to the point of inaction is not something that is beneficial to my mental health, and definitely not to the health of these things that I'm doing. And I think that being able to put a name to these emotions and these blockers earlier in my career would have been a huge help for me. And the recommendations here are not to say, go live carelessly, don't do your due diligence or check the data. This book is written for the people who are getting stuck in those loops, who don't want to launch live because maybe something in a rare phenomenon might be the issue. This book, or in this register, this Fieldsmith's register, does not go into that detail because that's not the intended audience, to make sure that people are crossing their T's and dotting their I's. So please do not use this as a way to recklessly start and finish and launch products, but understand that this is material for the folks who are lost in that finish line fog. And I hope that being able to see someone else who has gone through all of these different experiences and all these different emotions helps them understand that they're not alone, but also empowers them to take that next step towards the finish line. If you liked this adventure with the Threadweaver, Keeper of the Yielding Loom, please let me know. I'd love to do more stuff like this. I'm definitely in those early phases of the podcast that I'm not too sure what my audience wants. Is it the audiobook of the Innovation Forge? Is it interview with other Slate folks? Is it the Forge Bellows newsletter? Is it the Workbench walkthroughs? Is it the ForgeWorks grimoire that's coming hopefully soon as I record this? But let me know what is resonating with you, what you like about the podcast, what you don't like about the podcast, so that I can create content that resonates with you, that helps you take that next step in your professional journey. So, audience, thank you again for joining me for this new adventure, and remember to strike true. Outro. That was today's entry from the Fieldsmith's Register. If the signs felt familiar, you're not alone. These stalls don't mean the work is broken, they mean it's waiting. Waiting for a name, waiting for your hand, waiting to be finished. But keep the register nearby. In my experience, the fog returns often, but so do we. Until next time, watch the coals, mark the signs, and finish what's nearly done. If you enjoyed today's episode, please grow the guild by rating and reviewing the Innovation Forge podcast, or sharing it with a colleague who needs to hear about these creative crossovers in education. The best review or comment every month will get an ebook of my book, of course. Particularly great ones will also be featured on future episodes. Thank you so much for joining me in the workshop today. Remember to strike true, and let's forge something extraordinary together. Hi y'all, more weirdness while working on my Fieldsmith's Register on Systems project. I didn't even go looking for it. The floor plans shifted. Literally, they shifted beneath the admin wing while I was tracing deferred payroll workflows, no one else noticed. Of course they didn't, but where there was a door, there hadn't been one there before. No label, just brushed aluminum and a lock that it didn't require a key, only intention. Beyond it, silence. A sterile stillness broken only by the distant thrum of processing power. That's when I saw it. The Titan. 6 limbs of articulated glass and steel, humming with flowcharts in real time. Its body shimmered with dashboards. The widgets were blooming across its exoskeleton like an invasive species. Its eyes weren't even eyes, they were requisition forms. So many. Watching, approving, rejecting. It was auditing my thoughts. Every curriculum update, every job posting, every time off request whispered through its frame. I could hear them all. The inputs, the validations, the red lines. It doesn't forget. You think you pressed submit for approval. It lets you think that. Its domain isn't the interface. It's just a mask. Its roams beneath, folded between fiscal years and benefits. It doesn't move through space. It reorganizes it. When I turned to leave, I wasn't in the same hallway. The budget office had become a vault of org charts. People walked past me with vacant eyes, their ID badges pulsing like a heartbeat monitor. One of them looked at me. Workday, the modular one beneath the fold. The modular one has no need for doors. It unfolds around you.